Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to the Total Party Skills channel. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. It's a brand new channel. I'm really trying to do something to try to get the algorithm on YouTube to notice me at all. So every little bit helps. Be sure to hit thumbs down and tell me how I'm wrong about everything in the comments below. Don't worry, this isn't a riffs video, so you don't have to worry about coming up with some creative way to insult my physical appearance. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about tonight is a subject that I've been putting off doing a video about since the book came out, and that would be Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. For the most part, it's basically just an extension of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. You get some more, variable class, archetype stuff, for various classes hit 3rd level. It's this information on patrons, I guess, might be handy for newer DMs. Magic tattoos, they're kind of a fresh idea back in 1991 when, Riffs did it already, so... And there, I said this wasn't going to be a Riffs video. The section on puzzles and traps, they're a little gimmicky for me. But for the most part, it's just a book. It's not terrible. You can never hurt to have more spells, available. Albeit that means there's gonna have to be yet another card pack that comes out with all the spell cards for all the spells and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and tattoo cards too, no doubt. More things for you and your players to spend, $14.99 and up on. To help keep Wizards of the Coast get their, electricity running at night. And they can have the ACs and all that good stuff, pay their rent. But, the problem with Tasha's Cauldron, obviously, is the customizable race optional rules. Which, yes, from what a little bit I gather, most DMs out there are not really hip to these at all. And there's a good reason why. I personally call it, because of that thing, I want to call Tasha's Cauldron of taking all the creative control away from your Dungeon Master. I know this is going to boggle some minds out there, especially for younger viewers, but limitations are what make role-playing games fun. They're what makes any game fun. Limitations are what sets the challenge, and overcoming the challenge is where the fun comes from. Chess wouldn't be chess if you're allowed to just move the pieces willy-nilly wherever you want on the board. There's structure, and that structure is defined by the limitations of how the pieces are able to move. In D&D, the limitations, are restrictions on your capabilities, limitations on hit points, the random variability of the dice rolls that, even with all your, proficiency bonuses and ability score modifiers, you roll low, it's not going to make a difference. That all presents a challenge. And having these amorphous, make whatever you want, gray blob characters, that is basically what the customizable build your own race thing kind of is to me. How the hell is the DM supposed to, set up a setting and, have characters that fit within that setting by how he's designed it, if people can just, waltz in and just make, the shapeless thing, and they can describe it as whatever, species, race, lineage, whatever you want to call that thing now. Just, make it up at will. I feel like there's a trend, and it's an indicative of the trend. That probably where 6th edition D&D is going to end up being, is that they're handing more and more power over to the players. They've already kind of been doing that. I mean, 5th edition, it's fun to run, it's easy to run, people are eager to play it. It's very plug and play in terms of dungeon mastering, and unless you're just going out of your way to create original villains, everything's already just kind of mapped out for you to just use it without having to do a bunch of work ahead of time, which makes it convenient. But, the characters are insanely overpowered. I mean, I think the main thing that I find attractive about the OSR movement is just to have, older depowered D&D games. Modern D&D, the way it's built for the player characters, is a power fantasy. They're nigh unstoppable, they're loaded to the gills with special abilities, There's some structural differences, but inherently it's got the same kind of problem that 4th edition D&D had in that regards, of just they're like too many options and too overpowering. And it changes the nature of how the game feels. I mean, infamously there's that incident where like everyone freaked out because a character in Critical Role died. People wouldn't freak out unless something like that was defying their expectations of a power fantasy. In a power fantasy, you never lose. Now, older D&D, and the reason why I like the older D&D is kind of more like a Zelda game. It was a courage fantasy. Your characters were very much vulnerable and at risk, and yet, by nature of the fact that you're playing the game and you're trying to advance them and keep them alive and accumulate wealth and resources, you have to force them to go through this gauntlet of, potential, death. And, I think that makes a critical difference in how the game is played. And Tasha's Cauldron is veering further and further away from that kind of stuff. Like the customizable characters is basically just like letting people play a doppelganger that's been frozen in whatever shape it's in at the beginning. Like choosing, I'm already like us. I don't like the whole way that we've gotten so far away from allowing ourselves to put any kind of ability score limitations on any of the characters. Low attributes, having a low ability score provides role-playing fun and role-playing opportunities. It's kind of akin, like, if you play Fallout and you dial the intelligence rate way down and then you play through and you realize that your dialogue options are massively different. It's that kind of philosophy. But, the way things are going, it's kind of more like Skyrim now, or that's, I think, where the next generation of D&D is going to be. They want the mass market appeal. They want more and more normal people to not feel, intimidated, by how eldritch the rule system is. They want more players to play. Who cares about the DMs? The DMs are a small fraction of the total play base. They want more players. They want more people who can experience it passively in such a way that they'll still feel like buying the toys and t-shirts and whatnot, even if they're not really investing their time in D&D the way it has been for the last 40, 50 fucking years. And, the more they water it down like this, there's going to be a point that, aside from the fact that there has a few branded, trademarked creatures in it, like beholders and owlbears and shit, it's going to stop being Dungeons and Dragons. It's going to have the name on it, but it's not going to be that game. And so what are people doing? What are any of us doing? Recently I'd ordered from a Drive-Thru RPG the whole set of core books for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition. I have not seen those things, since they were in print back in the 90s. And I'm sitting there thumbing through them, and I'm kind of feeling stupid for spending the last several years, like chasing this dragon of trying to find the thing that's missing in 5th edition D&D. And the thing that's missing in 5th edition D&D is 2nd edition D&D. The game was fine. The only reason they stopped production of it is because Wizards bought it, and they don't want to just be selling someone else's book. They got to put out a new one. And they got to change it up enough so that the revenue doesn't go to the original authors, it goes to them. And then periodically, several years, half a decade, however long it was after 3rd edition goes along, they got some new people rising up in the company. They want the money to come to them, not to the people who just moved out. So then they got to put out a 3.5. And then they could have put out a 4th edition. And now they put out a 5th edition. And if, I'm correct on the timing, 5th edition, might be the longest running edition under Wizards of the Coast's, control. So it feels like any time now, 6th edition is going to come. I don't know. It's a cash cow, so I can see them not doing it. But Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is not a good indication of the trajectory that the mainstream wing of this hobby is going. Yeah, I don't know. It bugs me. It bugs me. And I know it bugs other people. So feel free to tell me why you don't like Tasha's Cauldrons of Everything's, racial customization rules. It's just... If you break the limitations of character creation too much, Like, you might as well just go back to being kids playing pretend and arguing over who shot who. No, I'm dead. No, I'm not. Yeah. Like, is everyone going to just start off in 6th edition D&D? Everyone automatically just starts off with all their ability scores at 20, and they automatically start off at 20th level. And yeah, I mean, like, you know, how much further are we going to push this hand holding? You know, Skyrim sold a lot and made a lot of money, but the hardcore Elder Scrolls fans do not hold it in as high as regard as they do Oblivion or especially Morrowind. And there's a reason for that. They were deeper, more involved games because they were more challenging, because they didn't just hold you by the dick and lead you around and tell you everything you're supposed to do. So my recommendation is to just drop D&D in their products. There's plenty of stuff out there to buy. There's like lots of old books that are available through RPG. There's a lot of other companies. If you like the 5th edition rule set, but you kind of want to tone down the power levels a little bit, a game I recently discovered that I'm going to start running soon is called Old Swords Reign. It's very much an OSR game, but at the same time, it's based on the 5th edition rule set instead of trying to recreate the old basic set. I'm gonna give it a shot and just see how it goes, but I like it upon reading the rules system for it, and it's got an affordable price point. And after that, I actively experiment with AD&D. I mean, you know, I know we all, like, you know, in hindsight, all love the ascending AC thing that 3rd edition started, and it continues on to the modern day. But are we really so wincy over having to fucking figure out how THACO works again? That you go to like such great lengths to like buy old modules and try to modify everything to make it match the 5th edition, when you could just go out and actually get a brand new copy of the edition that went with those modules? I don't know. I just don't know. Anyway, that's my video on Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, in which I maybe spent a couple minutes out of the last 12 minutes talking about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Shows how much I like that book. Anyway, hit like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Hit me up on Twitter @PartySkills. And, yeah, I guess that's it. Stay waspinated, folks.